Hello, good morning, everybody. It is 10 a.m. here. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Janine Deutsch, and I will be doing the webinar today. Hopefully, you all can hear me. If you can, go ahead and raise your hand on the little panel to the side and let me know that you can hear me. We have just a couple of the people who are going to join. Awesome. Thank you, Mandy. And if you can't hear me, hopefully you can see on my screen. I'm going to move my video. I'm not sure if that's in the way, but if you cannot hear, you might want to call in to here, and I'm just going to leave that screen up for just a little bit in case anybody wants to call in. We're just going to wait just a moment and then we'll get started. Today we're going to talk about boundaries, one of my favorite subjects. Last week we talked about creating a peaceful work environment, and what that basically looks like is making sure you have enough lighting, enough space, decluttering, making sure you have a schedule, those kinds of things. There is a link to that on the FSI website. If you have not been able to hear that webinar, you can go to the FSI website and find that link and be able to listen to that one. So this webinar was only going to be about, I'd say about 20 minutes, a little bit shorter than last week, just because I did all the introductions and everything of who I am and how I got to FSI. So we're going to kind of skip that part and move on. So it does look like it's 10:01, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the side. Let me see if there's any questions right now first before we start, if anybody's having trouble logging in. Nope, doesn't seem to be. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. If you have questions throughout my presentation, go ahead and type them in, or you can wait to the end. I'll unmute and you can ask your question. I'm going to be sharing this webinar. There will be a link to this webinar as well. And I just want to give you my information in case you need it. Let me scroll down here. So my name is Janine Deutsch, and there is my phone number, extension, and email. So if you have questions about anything that's going on in your house right now, I'm happy to help. I have a teaching background. I went to school for education. I teach at FSI. I'm a trainer. And then, of course, I'm in corporate America. So I've kind of been juggling this for a while. I've been working from home for about 2 years. So I kind of have that under my belt as well. The only thing I haven't done is homeschooled and work from home. So the past 4 weeks, I have been doing that. I'm on week 4. I don't know what week you all are on, but I have been doing that, and we've kind of got into our little flow. So hopefully what I'm teaching, because I'm applying it, is helping, and you all will benefit from that as well. So I am going to, oh, we're in my back screen, sorry. I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and we're going to start on the current slide. So we're going to talk about boundaries, setting boundaries in your home while under quarantine. I know it seems like, okay, we're in such a small place, and I don't know how many people you have in your home and how big your home is, and that might be a little bit harder, but I want you to know that it is possible, and you're not alone, and there's always grace. Give yourself grace in anything that you do right now. All right, so we're going to talk about how to set boundaries. So first, we're going to talk about setting guidelines for your time, space, and structure of your day and what that looks like. Sticking to the guidelines that you created and how to do that. I know sometimes it's hard, especially when you have maybe a little one looking up at you with big puppy dog eyes, asking you if they can go play while they should be working. And then rewarding positive behavior appropriately until the routine's created. You don't want to create a system of reward where they think everything they do is going to get a reward. And then being patient as your child adjusts to changes, because remember, this is huge for you, but it's also huge for your child. They're used to a different environment. They're used to a great amount of structure. And right now, we have with what's going on and working from home, sometimes we can't go with their structure and what they're used to and having everything the way they used to have it. So it's also hard on them not to see their friends and things like that. So we're going to talk about their emotional state as well right now. So how to stick to our boundaries. I think this is crucial to start with at first, because you need to know how to stick to your boundaries before you apply them. So you need to be assertive. That is not aggressive, that's not passive, it's kind of right in between. What you say is law right now, and those are our boundaries for now. And when this changes, that'll be a little different. It might look a little different. So you need to be assertive and stick to what it is that you have set in your house for your rules. Learn to say no. I know for me that was a very hard thing, but there's a book by Lisa Turkhurst called The Best Gift. If you have not read that, you might want to read that book. Basically, it's telling you that everything you say no to, you're actually saying yes to something else. So if you're saying no to them having a tantrum or fighting or whatever it is, you're saying yes to whatever the better thing is, which is obviously them behaving well and learning how to work in this new environment. Practice makes perfect, and I put that in quotes because there is no such thing as perfect. So mamas, daddies, whoever's listening to me right now, know that we are not perfect. Your children are not perfect. Your teachers are not perfect. The school is not perfect. Yes, we're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be things we don't agree with. There's going to be times that we're going to struggle. But right now, we just have to ride those waves and just breathe through those difficult times because nobody is perfect. Safeguard your space, especially being as we are in a quarantine state. You need me time, which that's going to be discussed in 2 weeks from now. Hopefully you can join that webinar. You need family time, which means no work, no schoolwork. It's just you and your family bonding together. And you need to safeguard your workspace. So obviously, just like me, you might need to be on calls, you might need to be on webinars, you might need to be talking to other people in a professional manner. Everyone knows what's going on right now. That's the good thing. For the past 2 years, I worked from home, and I would sometimes have to say, pardon my dog barking in the background, I work from home. But everyone right now knows that we are all in a different situation. And this situation does call for us possibly to have some noise in the background every once in a blue moon. But you do need to safeguard your space where you do not allow those children or dogs or whatever it is to come into your space while you're working. We'll talk about what that looks like. And then last but not least, get support. You joining this webinar is support alone. So good for you on that. You've got that, you've got that down. But get support from your spouse. If you don't have a spouse, your significant, maybe a significant other that you can talk to on the phone. If you don't have a significant other, maybe your parents. If you don't have parents, definitely get the teacher support. You want that teacher support so that you work as a team together, and the school support so you're a team unit, so that when problems arise, your child knows that what the teacher says, mama says too. And I like to call you the teacher aide right now, or daddy says too. You're the teacher aide and you're working with your teacher. All right. So let's talk about setting time boundaries. That may be probably the biggest struggle that I have heard on Facebook. I don't have enough time to do this, or my schedule conflicts with their schedule. So let's talk about what that looks like. Be sure your child understands that they are still required to do all their work in a timely manner, just like in school. So they came from a structured environment. You want to keep them in that structured environment as much as you can, and then they're going to go back to a structured environment. So if we don't say to them, math is whatever it is, 45 minutes, older kids will know their schedule and how many minutes each class was. Younger kids may not know that, so you may need to talk to your teacher about that. How much time should it take my child to do this math sheet? And set that time limit up for them. And for yourself too, with work. Set timers between subjects and lessons. So older kids, your high schoolers, your teens, may be used to a bell going off in the school telling them, okay, it's time to stop this subject and go to the next subject. They pack up their bags and they go to the next subject. So you might want to set timers in between to kind of give them that audible boundary of that you should be done this subject now. Kind of get them used to what they were doing, but in a home setting. And for the younger ones, that's good to let them know that they're being timed and you can't just sit and dilly-dally and stare into space. Plan their schedules around your webinars and conference calls. So for example, this morning, it was a little different because it happens to be my birthday. So we went and got a little pastry, and then we came home and we kind of did a little thing. But between 9 and 10 o'clock, my daughter knew that that was her math time, and that's what she needed to do for math. So that's what she was doing. And they were, she was doing her math, and she usually does that with me here in my office because she needs a little more structure. So we did that, and then she knew at 5 to 10 she needed to leave, and then she set her little tent outside my door because she does not like to be alone. She's an only child, and you may have an only child who feels the same way. So she knows at that time she can do her grammar, which she's great at. She can do it without me, no big problem, or she can read. She also has the option to play. There's also food in the pantry and refrigerator. So think about these things when you have webinars and conference calls, and be prepared for them. Work around your teacher's conference call. Some of you, your child may have to be online at a specific time. I know my friend, her son has to be online at 8:30 with his teacher. So they have a little tablet that came home with them. You may not have that situation. You may have to be using your computer. You may only have one computer in your house. If that's the case, and your child has to be on a conference call or a call with their child, make sure that your work knows that, your supervisor knows that, and you need to let your supervisor know you may need to bring your computer home. One day, 3 weeks ago, I walked into work because we were still going into work at that time. And I go every Wednesday. I just go in to kind of show my face and be there. And so I was going in on a Wednesday. There was nothing at this lady's desk, and I was like, "What happened?" And I thought maybe she was like, "Oh, or something." And they said, "Nope." They brought everything to her house. Her actual desktop computer that was on her desk, they brought to her house. So make those plans if you need to. Set up conference times with your child's teacher if your child is having difficulties. So we have, with our school, we would email our teacher, say we need a time to talk. We would figure out that time, and then we would either Zoom, or she would send a Loom, which is basically a teaching tool that teachers use to teach on, and then it shows the kids how to do what they're doing, or maybe even just FaceTime or a phone call. So those are the kinds of things that you want to think about. Reward positive behavior. This is not a bribe. I know some people say, "Oh, if you do this, I'll give you this." If you're using it as a bribe, yes, but rewarding positive behavior for younger children is a little more frequent because they need to be reinforced that what they're doing is the right thing. This is all new to them, so they need to be reinforced over again, this is the right thing. Older students, maybe your tweens and your teenagers up to seniors, need to understand that when you do Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday well, there will be a reward, just so that they know that they get something out of this. They're probably struggling the most out of this. I want you to know, if you have teenagers or tweens, they are struggling the most because they can't see their friends. They can't, be with each other. And that's what their life is really about. If you think about it, they're friends. And so reward with extra FaceTime, reward with extra tablet time, reward with extra phone calls, those kinds of things that will really reinforce what it is they're doing positively. And then set consequences for negative behavior. So if in your house, your rule was you had to have all of your work done by whatever, and I'm talking probably older kids for this one, and they don't, there needs to be a consequence. They need to understand that you are not joking here. This is not optional work time. This is school. And the younger ones, obviously, you need to be appropriate with theirs. It may be less TV time or something else. They may not get a treat or things like that. But set those consequences appropriately for the behavior. Just because you're having a bad day, you don't want to say, "I'm taking away all your toys." That's not appropriate for the consequence. Space boundaries. Right now, I am sure all of you are feeling this. I want my space. I want my time alone. I want me. I just want to get away. I'm feeling the same thing. Even though I was a teacher, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I'm telling you, I'm feeling the same thing. This will all be over soon enough in perspective. But just as the classroom has a limited space, your child needs to know that they have a limited space. Be creative. My child built a little hut in our living room, and it's kind of out where it's kind of like behind the couch where I can't see it because I like everything nice and neat and clean. And so it's behind the couch, and sometimes she needs to go in there and work. And sometimes she needs to sit by me and work. And we've discovered that that's a lot better if she sits next to me and works. Not on my desk. Nothing of hers is allowed on my desk. Don't allow your children to come in and throw their paperwork down and say, here, check that. That's not creating good boundaries for your space. Make sure it's on their desk in an appropriate place. Like I said in my last webinar, so she gets all of her work on a clipboard to the left of her. She's left-handed. To the left of her. She picks that up, does her work for that day. It's all flipped and it has the date on it. And then she does her work right in the middle there. And then on the right-hand side is another clipboard where she puts all her done work. And then I can check it. So that's a good way to create space boundaries right there on her own desk. Be sure that your workspace is separate from your child's. Just like I said, I have my desk and hers is right next to me, but it is her space and she knows she's not allowed to go past that line of where my desk ends right here. And if it's your office, you don't want them in your office, make sure that door is shut when you don't want them in that office. Have physical or visual boundaries. For example, a door, a room divider, you know, those little wooden room dividers that you can kind of fold and put up to the side. You can get one of those. A piece of painter's tape. If you have 4 children working at a table, for example, you just put a piece of painter's tape down the middle and down the other side, and then they know that in that painter's tape is their boundaries. And if you start putting stuff on your sister or your brother's side, that's not appropriate, and you need to move that back onto your side and work that out. It also gives them a good sense of how to keep a clean desk for when they get older. If children are sharing a space, be sure they have created boundaries from their siblings, and I just talked about that. Know your child's needs. Okay, so when we started this whole thing, I knew my daughter could not work in her bedroom. There are too many toys, too many distractions, her little music box, ticking from the clock, you name it. So we took her desk out of her bedroom, put it in the living room. We just took the living room table, put it up against the wall. There's only 3 of us here, so we just put it up against the wall. We eat on the one side, and then put her desk right in the middle. There's nothing else in there, just a window. There's nothing that could possibly distract her. Bless her little heart, she could not stay focused. So this week, we decided it's time to move her desk into my office because she was continually coming in here asking for a hug. Listen to your child's needs. I need a hug, I need a hug, I need a hug. That's insecurity. They're not okay. If you realize that your child's lately been, or the opposite, I hate you, I hate everything, either I need, or I hate, those are extremes. Your child needs you to talk to them right now. And you need to ask them, what's going on? How can I help? What can we do? What kind of boundaries can we set up to make this a peaceful environment for you and for me? I recommend that you have a little family meeting every night as well, just to go over your day. Prioritize, so setting structured guidelines. So this is how you set that structured guideline. Number 1, you have to prioritize. Prioritize the night before. I know things are going to come up and it's going to throw it off a little bit. You're going to veer off. That's okay. But try to prioritize your day the day before. So last night, I actually did it on Monday. I'm a little bit of an overachiever. But on Monday, I did her Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday work. Friday, we don't have anything except journaling because we've handed everything in. So I put them all together, put the day in front of it, and there you go. She's 9. She can't do that on her own. She can probably, but it would take a very long time. So if you have younger ones, you might want to do it for them. Older ones, you might want to sit with them and help them prioritize what they need to do first. And same with you with your work. Carve out your work time. So again, we talked about with the meetings, you know you're going to have a meeting. Let's face it, everyone who is in this situation, your supervisor, your employee, whoever it is you report to, knows the situation you are in. So they know that it is not going to be 100%. You're not going to be working 8 to 10 if you're salaried. A lot of people work 10, 12 hours a day. They know right now you're probably not going to be able to do that. Your work time can be 8 p.m. and on when your child is doing something else. Just work with your supervisor and the person that you report to try to make that all flow well. Make your schedule visible. So we started this in the very beginning. Ours is actually on a piece of paper and it's listed out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's journaling. But if you need it on your door for your child to see, it's 10 a.m. and I'm in a webinar, real big, highlighted. They know they're not supposed to come in here. So put a schedule on your door, put it on your refrigerator, put it on the desk they're working on, whatever it may be, but make sure it's visible so they can see it. For younger kids, use a checklist. They love to be able to check things off and say, I did this, Mommy. So put a little box next to whatever it is they're supposed to do and let them check that off. Set realistic office hours. I kind of talked about that in carving out your work time. You really need to just be realistic with yourself. You're not going to be able to go at the pace that you were going out at right now, but you can carve out those special times, especially at night, to do what you need to do and stay focused and get things done. Capitalize on nap time and screen time. I don't have nap time anymore. I wish we did. She's a little too old for that, but I can give her screen time instead and say, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to get an hour of screen time. That gives me an hour to do what I need to do and really stay focused in specific areas. Set up play stations away from your office, but in ear distance. So I live in a small house. You may live in a 2-story. If you do, you don't want your child upstairs playing while you're downstairs or vice versa. You want them within ear's distance, but maybe in another room where you can kind of shut the door a little bit so you can still hear them if something were to go wrong. And then separate your parent and business roles. So this is crucial. Right now, I think the reason why a lot of parents are struggling the most is because within 5 minutes, you can go from employee to husband or wife or significant other or child who's taking care of an elderly adult to mommy, back to employer, back to spouse. All of this can happen quickly. You need to carve out your time so that you can be the parent when you need to be the parent and work when you need to work. For example, yesterday after we were done working, we all ate dinner and then we went on a walk together, and that was just time for us to talk to each other, enjoy each other, spend time with each other, get some exercising. Be sure you're exercising. You need to release those endorphins that are going right now. It's crazy. So make sure you separate those roles. And then you are the example for your child. So if you're frustrated, they're going to be frustrated. Try, if you feel yourself always frustrated right now, go ahead and listen to my first webinar where we create a peaceful environment. And then let your child know that it's going to be okay. Let yourself know that it's going to be okay. You're not alone. My first webinar had like 60-some people because everyone's stressed out. and everyone is like that right now. So just set the example. If you're bad-mouthing the teacher, if you're saying this is ridiculous, if you're angry about the amount of workload that your child is getting, your child's going to just follow right behind you. So think about the things that you're saying and doing. All right, here are some helpful hints. Use the skip it rule. I love this rule. So we go over everything in the morning of what she needs to do. She should know what she's doing. There's videos that she watches from her teacher. We go over all of that. If she comes to me and says, Mommy, I don't get this, you're going to have to skip it right now. Mommy's busy. We've discussed it. And then later on, when I have time, we can go back to that one problem or that set of problems that she doesn't understand. And we can review that again. Don't continue to stop your day for one little thing that you have already reviewed with your child. Take small breaks in between lessons. So as I said, she was in here. Now she's outside the door. And when we're done, she'll come back in. That's a little break for both of us. And then sometimes we'll just get a little snack. And if you plan the night before, like I said, you have that snack already prepared. So if you're working on your island in your kitchen, which a lot of people are right now, or your table, if it's prepared, you take it out, you eat it, you put it in the sink, you're done. There's no mess. You don't have to worry about any messes. And then be prepared for occasional veers off the road. So sometimes we are going to veer off the road. Sometimes we're going to crash into that picket fence right there. And you're just going to say, I'm done. I'm done for today. It's okay. Just as long as you don't have those days every day, it's okay to veer off the road once in a blue moon. And I think we just need to hear that, especially as adults, especially as hardworking citizens where we are kind of trained to be working all the time. It's okay to get a break. Your child veers off the road. We just need a break right now. Let's go hit the ball. Let's go run around the house. If you have an energetic child and they cannot sit still, that is a sign that they have energy that needs to be exerted. Tell that child to literally go outside the house and run around the house 10 times. I promise you, anyone who does this, when their child comes back, they are ready to sit for a little bit. And if they're not, have them do it again. I know there's special needs children, maybe hyperactivity disorders and things like that out there that you're struggling with right now because you have to work and you might have a hyperactive child. It's okay just to let them run around the house, and when they come back, they'll be ready to focus. But they also need peaceful work environments. So I'm sure as their parents, you know that, and you know what they need. So just make sure that all of those things are applied. So if for some reason you feel like we're just not getting it, these boundaries are not working, nothing's working correctly like it should, I want you to read these 10 signs that possibly you may lack personal boundaries. And it's okay. I did for a long time. I think I'm an expert in boundaries now. I had some counseling. I read a bazillion books on it. I'm teaching on it. So here, you know that if you fail to speak up when mistreated, you might have some personal boundary issues. Or if you give away too much of your time, agree to do things that you don't want to do, feeling guilty about dedicating your time to yourself, that was my big thing. I knew I had boundary issues when I was feeling guilty just for relaxing. If you're feeling guilty for relaxing, you need to find out why you're feeling guilty for relaxing and work through that. What are those lies that you're believing about relaxing that aren't true? If you feel taken for granted by others or have toxic relationships or have chronic fear of what other people think about you, that was my other one. I always needed to be at my best, perform my best, do my best. So think about those things. Do you constantly feel like the victim, or do you attract people who control or dominate you? Those are signs of people who lack boundaries. So if for some reason one of those stood out to you, you're like, oh, that's me, and maybe you didn't realize that, Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend have 3 wonderful books that I highly, highly recommend. The book for the adult boundaries was an eye-opener, a life changer for me, and how I saw people, how I saw myself, and how I figured out how to finally set boundaries. So I just felt like I was always being a bad person when I set boundaries, and that's not true. So boundaries with kids is for your younger children, obviously. Boundaries with teens is for your teens, and then boundaries, the book Boundaries, is for yourself. So I highly recommend those 3 books if you want to read up on those and read up on boundaries. And that's all I really have for you today about that. And I thank you for joining me. But I do want to see if we do have any questions. Let's see. Hopefully, let me look and see if anybody wrote any questions. No, I don't see any written questions. And let me see real quick. If anybody raises their hand, I'll be happy to unmute you if you have a question. I'm going to give you a couple minutes. And if you happen to have called in, let me real quick, hold on. Let me unmute. There we go. If you happen to call in, you're unmuted. See if anybody's typing. No, I don't see any questions. Okay. Well, if you do, you got my information in the beginning of this webinar, and feel free to email me or call me if you just need to talk to somebody. I am here. I'm a listening ear. Happy to talk to you about these things. Oh, I just see one. Do I have any suggestions for a kid who just wants to rush through their work? I'm thinking that's good. Unfortunately, I can't see that. Here we go. Do you have any suggestions for a kid who just wants to rush through everything to get the reward? I sure do. So one thing that my husband and I do is I am the assistant teacher. And so she has a teacher, then she has me who is the assistant teacher. And then unfortunately, my husband does have to go to work every day. So when he comes home, he checks the work. And he basically is like the principal. And so if the work is not done properly or to the expectation that we have for our child, she does need to sit down and redo everything. Because it's important to teach your child that, yes, the reward comes, but not just because you did it, but because you did it well. And that's really important, what they need to know. So if you can, if you see that that work is not done properly at the time, I'm going to say, I'm going to have our principal, Mr. whoever, check this and make sure that it's worth that reward. And if you know it's worth it right away and they're doing well, or you may even want to say to them, another thing you say to them is, I feel like this is not your best work. Let's try this again and see if we can get that reward. So those are two things that you can say to them. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, that was a good question. Maybe a couple more seconds to. And if you do have a question, you can actually put a little hand raise too. I think that might be it. Let's see, anyone else? All right, thank you so much for joining us. Remember, next week we're going to talk about creating special family time with your family, things to do, how to do that, when to do that. And then the week after that is me time. So hopefully you'll join me with both of those next week. And then, like I said, we'll send you the link from last week if you did not get that as well. All right, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day and you all stay safe and wash your hands. Thank you.